started here. Drew on the play with a Ponder off of an island. And let's see if it's the perfect 3 or not. And it is. Gotta hate to see that if you're Will, don't you, Mason?
Yeah, Drew didn't even think about it. Just yep, those 3 on top was great.
Yeah, and probably the opposite of Ponder here, getting Thoughtseized. The only foil to that, as Will is going to take a look at Drew's hand. Got to dress down a Ponder, a couple of prismatic endings. What are you thinking here if you're Will?
Yeah, a lot of different options. You're trying to think about exactly what's going to be best to interact with you. So I imagine, you'd love to take Prismatic Ending because it could maybe answer something. But from what you're seeing, your cards that are invaluable might actually outscale those. So take the Ponder and let Drew have less selection to have the exact right answer.
Yeah, we saw Drew pick up a Brainstorm. It's going to be interesting to see what Will's got here. It looks like a Chrome Mox. A lot of Chrome Mox in this weekend.
Yeah, there's a ton of Chrome Mox and a ton of Dark Ritual. Just over there's Sheoldred. Old girl, my favorite in Legacy.
Yeah, and interesting to see Chrome Mox on Sheoldred, knowing that there's those 2 prismatic endings in Drew's hand as Drew draws, plays a Scalding Tarn, and passes the turn back.
Yeah, almost makes you wonder if you're Drew, my opponent's 4-0, knows I have 2 endings, so I even have 1 to spare. Why are they down to do this? And this is why, because Will had Opposition Agent.
Yeah, and sees those 2 fetch lands from Drew, giving Drew the opportunity to use those rather than wind up, giving a land away to Will off that Opposition Agent. But once that's in play, that's a problem for multiple reasons if that resolves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now do we have those lands in our deck to answer this with the Prismatic Ending?
Yeah. I was saying it looked like for a second Drew was thinking about putting back both endings, but I think Drew is realizing that, once these fetches are cracked, it might not be that bad to spend some turns firing off removal. Either taking down that Chrome Mox, the 3rd mana source, taking some damage to Opposition Agent, or not. But we'll see what it is that he decides to do, as he does have a Force of Will in hand.
Yeah, and like I mentioned there, so Drew's just grabbing basics. Does have access to 1 Volk in the deck, so we could have, Prismatic Ending for 3. Opposition Agent here. Not going to be doing much unless there's some more fetching. It looks like Will has a Chrome Mox. Importantly, this is for mana number 4. This deck's a lot of its strongest plays are on 4 mana. As an Orcish Bowmaster goes under the Mox, you got to think if Will's throwing that card away, there's something strong. And the One Ring, I think, qualifies as something strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much that is stronger than the One Ring these days. And you have to imagine it's something that's strong based on the fact that these Chrome Moxes have Sheoldred and Orcish Bowmasters under them.
Yeah. 2 things you'd very likely love to put in the battlefield or even use as bait for this One Ring. So we have a little protection thing. Love is War.
Yeah, it looks like we've let that ring resolve, which going to be interesting to see what Drew's plan is here. He's got a Narset. Okay, a Narset to punish that ring. And then passing it back, not using the Narset to keep it alive through the Opposition Agent, as Will's going to take 1 here from the ring.
There's some interesting stuff here because, Will can activate the ring on Drew's turn to draw a card. And if we can kill the Narset, we're going to be taking a little bit more damage, but we will be up on those cards still later. So I'm interested to see how Will's going to play with this Narset in play. As City of Traitors into Karn, the Great Creator.
With 1 card in hand behind from Will, as Drew fires off Force Will, pitching that dress down. Keep the Karn off the table. He says that 1 ring is enough. This Narset doesn't stop that Karn. So
yeah.
Let's see what Will's last card is here, as it is a Dauthi Voidwalker.
Yeah, and that's a good threat and something that, if Drew uses an answer on maybe the Opposition Agent to unlock a fetch land, Will might be able to use that answer with the Dauthi on the Narset. So beyond just even attacking it if something were to get in the way. So lots of different options here. Days Undoing. That's going to be really good for Drew, as that's going to have both players draw 7 cards. And unfortunately for Will, there's a Narset in play. So we are going to only draw 1 card.
Yes. Yes. We're only going to draw the one card. I guess we might... We can't even draw the card off the One Ring in addition to that, right? We only get the one card, and if we activate it, because Days Undoing ends the turn at the end of Resolution, you can get that second counter, but you can't get any cards here. So what do you think Drew's looking for here? Obviously, like, 7 cards to your opponent's 1 is a good exchange, but what do you think Drew's looking for here in terms of keeping this Narset around, keeping the ring under control?
So probably want something like Swords to Plowshares or Supreme Verdict, which we just picked up, and we picked up the swords. Those are going to be good things to sort of unlock our mana and answer this battlefield. The ring's going to trigger and make Will lose some life, but we kind of want those cards, and we probably want some other Planeswalker. We're going to lose Narset soon. We do have 4 Narsets, so a second Narset is not exactly the end of the world. Will, of course, has access to use Dauthi Voidwalker on that Days Undoing going forward now.
Looks like we're going to send both creatures at Narset. Drew does have some removal. Looks like he's going to Swords to Plowshares the Dauthi Voidwalker. Get that problem taken care of. The Narset's going to go down, meaning the ring is freed up to do what it does best, which is just about everything.
Yep. Yeah, and we see Drew here fighting over the Dauthi. That way... Will can't put in the Narset later and have, that going to find even more cards. Grief.
Yeah, as we see, hard cast Grief here. Gonna get to take the best of on Drew's fresh 7-card hand, which looks to be some prismatic endings, that verdict, some lands, which are... Fetch lands are not very good against that opposition agent, and a minor misstep.
Mm-hmm.
What are you taking here if you're Will?
Yeah, I think I'm taking the Supreme Verdict. The prismatic ending is pretty clunky. I don't, it's very unlikely it even answers my Grief. And the Supreme Verdict can answer both these things. I'm going to force Drew to, play this prismatic ending on my agent here and make that be the play, or rip, a land in order to do it. So that would be my main idea here. Because if you're Will, you kind of can combo, right? They're sort of far away from that, especially with these endings. But you're still not sure. Okay, is Drew splashing maybe an Underground Sea or a Tundra, or I guess Tundra's not a good example, but Underground Sea, just something that can make the ending hit for 4. And that you need to get those things in play. But the verdict, you also need the pressure. So it's a weird sort of line that Will has to walk here.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Will, you've got to remember that Drew had that Force of Will for a spell you played the same turn as the One Ring, basically. So Drew was comfortable with letting the One Ring resolve because of that Narset. Who knows if there's more to it in terms of what made Drew okay with something as powerful as the One Ring hitting the table. So we see now an Orcish Bowmasters in response to this Prismatic Vista being cracked, just continuing to gum up the board and get ahead. As as much as this deck is called a mono black combo deck, it really is shining the ability of it to be just a mid-range deck as well.
Yeah, this deck's got a little bit what we call Parmesan in the business, Abe. It has a combo kill with a fair game plan, a little bit of cheese on top of our normal pasta of mid-range, as we do see Will here drawing 3 cards.
Yeah, like your deck is obviously good as a Dark Ritual, Grief, Orcish Bowmasters ties the room all together. You can get a lot of Parmesan situations with that opposition agent, as we see Drew dropping down to a dangerously low 7 here from Will's attack. But it's kind of that might even be the plan A more often with this deck than necessarily like having a Helm and a way to get them with the exile.
Will's up to something as we played a land to kill our City of Traitors, which was an Ancient Tomb. So with the same amount of mana in play, opposition agent is going to get flashed in here in response to the Teferi. I am unsure what Will is planning by putting the City of Traitors in the graveyard. It must be needing more mana on the next turn. So we had to play this Ancient Tomb now.
It looks like we have an opposition agent in response to Teferi Time Raveler. Prismatic ending on the Bowmasters, then a minus on the opposition agent from Teferi, just getting a little bit more space. As Will takes another 3 from the One Ring here.
If we can find Sheoldred, life's going to be nice with this ring going.
Yeah, there is one more Sheoldred in the deck for Will. As we see this, I'm not sure if this is an attack at will or the Teferi. But regardless, Drew is fetching a Tundra in response here before that opposition agent can hit the table. Looks like that was 1 at the Teferi and the Grief at Drew. So Will now has more cards than Days Undoing could ever imagine.
I was going to say, it's hard. It's hard to imagine this, right? Drew resolved Days Undoing, went up, 5 cards. Will, basically got to loot or whatever, had 1 card in hand, went down to 1 card again, but had the ring and was able to fight over the Narset and just has had so many cards. Looks like we have a double-faced card here. Is this Graveyard Trespasser? What is it? Oh, it's Agadeem.
No, I believe that's Agadeem's Awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, this deck plays so many of the Pioneer cards. I was really hoping we had some more heaters, Graveyard Trespasser, Dark Ritual Lake, get rid of your thing you're entombed for. Haha.
Oh, but, might be good in the Reanimator matchup.
Yeah, exactly. Opposition agent hits the board. Surprised we didn't see that try to get found in response to the fetch earlier. But...
No, the fetch was with the Teferi in place, though.
Oh, the Teferi was... Oh, okay, a little shortcutting happening. Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Drew is drawing his last pathetic card, Yugi, and we are going to be on to game 2 as the One Ring really showing just how potent it is. With that Narset not containing it anymore, even through a Days Undoing, just completely overpowering the advantage that Drew generated with his game plan.
Yeah, really impressive stuff.
Yeah, and so going into game 2, Drew's going to have access to a sideboard of 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Hull Breacher, a little bit more of that wheel stuff, 2 Meltdown, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 1 Containment Priest, 1 Blue Elemental Blast, a Hydro Blast, a Pyro Blast, really a lot of red and blue blasts, another Supreme Verdict, and a Minor Misstep. What of this are you looking at if you're Drew in this game 2?
I like the verdicts. Like we saw, we have the combo in the deck, but we also just have like a pretty good creature game plan, and we can sort of overwhelm with the ring cards. So I want to have access to those. I really like Hull Breacher. This is a way to sort of stop the One Ring once again, right? And to also work well with our Days Undoing. Basically, anytime the opponent would draw extra cards, we're going to get treasures instead of them drawing cards. That's going to be super, super big there. So I think I want those cards as my big things. There might be some minor upgrades I'm interested in, like Minor Misstep, but nothing else I'm too super excited to have in my sideboard here.
Yeah, and looking over at Will's sideboard, we've got 3 Plague Engineer, and then just a bunch of wish targets for this Karn. We've got a Chalice Void, an Ensnaring Bridge, a Helm of Obedience, Liquimetal Coating, Mycosynth Lattice, Pithing Needle, Filigree Silex, another copy of the One Ring, Tormod's Crypt, Trinisphere, Vault of Whispers is a land, a Wormcoil Engine. Is there any of this that you're looking at? Do you think Plague Engineer touches in? You want any of these wish targets? Or
yeah, I was taking a look at that because sometimes, as we've seen from the modern, the Pioneer green deck, we sometimes sideboard things in. I don't think any of these are particularly interesting for me outside of maybe Pithing Needle. We saw a lot of Planeswalkers, and so that might be something where maybe I have some card in my main deck that I'd rather have that instead of, but I don't think so. I think I'm pretty happy just to present the same and just have the 4 needles for my Karn define to name the exact walker I want. But always down to, be shown how wrong I am and learn a little. By the way, I meant to bring this up earlier. This mono black combo deck, Abe, has got me big eye emoji'd. I'm like, hello. Every time I see this deck, I've commentated a couple times now. It's really impressive, and the ring just makes so much sense. And I was curious why they weren't playing it before. I think it was just a week 1 situation thing. But this ring is just really good in this deck, and this deck is so good at going like, do something or do something on turn 1, and then go like Dark Ritual, powerful card, or go like Chrome Mox, Dark Ritual, powerful card. That makes up for the lack of card advantage you're losing.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen it throughout Modern, just on a wide scale, where it's hard to. Right, there's not Dark Ritual. There's not ways to get ahead on mana really in that format, but there are the pitch elementals like Solitude, like Grief, like Fury, where you can use the One Ring as a way to catch up on that card disadvantage in order to get those effects. And this is just a great Grief deck in that it has a combo it's trying to enable. It's going to generate a lot of those extra cards, and it makes a great One Ring deck too, because Dark Ritual itself is going to kind of make up for some of that time spent either by getting it out early or allowing you to do more with the cards you're drawing. Really breaking down that chokehold as we see. It looks like they're drawing opening hands. And Will is going to take a mulligan to 6, as it looks like Drew has kept his 7.
Yep. Drew's making a smiley face for us.
Do you think he's really that happy about what just happened?
Yeah, because his opponent mulliganed to 6. That's what just happened.
Oh, yeah.
New game, new Drew. We're not letting the pat. Listen, when we lost that game, happens all the time. We have the rest of life to be sad about losing that one. We got right now to win, Abe. So we're smiling. We might even get a bigger smile if we go down to 5. We might see like the side cards turn inward for a big old grin.
Ooh, I was thinking we might take those outside cards and turn them into like the little, see the dimples form. So we're really cheesing.
I like it.
Will thinking about going to 5 here, it looks like, or perhaps keeping a 6. Looks like we are keeping a 6. Just making sure that's the card we want to get rid of before Drew kicks us off.
Nice.
And no pregame effects, no Leyline in the Void. A real consideration from Will is that combos with a Helm of Obedience. And we see a Prismatic Vista for an island and a Ponder. See if Drew can be the only player. I think the only player I've seen today keep a Ponder on top, not shuffle, let alone if he did it twice, 2 times in the same match, whitelisted.
Unheard of. Mitgo Premium IRL.
I mean, that's just playing better.
Yeah. It really makes you sad, actually, right? Because you don't get full value out of your Ponder. They're just already there. You should have just waited. Should have played something else.
Yeah, it's like the whole hold your brainstorm thing to make sure your hand gets as good as possible. You got to hold your Ponder until the top of your deck is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't get to see that 4th card if you don't shuffle.
All right, well, this time we have Force and 2 fetch lands, so I can't imagine we're over the moon about this unless we really want the Force.
It looks like we do really want the Force. Perhaps having another fetch land to get rid of, maybe 2 lands in a row, not great, but our deck does have a lot of Planeswalkers, a lot of 3-mana spells, probably not the worst to have as we draw one of those fetches, play it, and pass. Will with just a pair of swamps, 1 snow-covered, 1 not.
Yeah, a little Apex swamp. I got in trouble once at a standard event when I was first starting playing because I found some snow islands in the bin. And I thought they looked cool, and I put them in my deck, and it turned out my deck was illegal. But I didn't get in too much trouble. They just made me put a normal island in.
Yeah, that judge sounds like a cop. I've got Orcish Bowmasters getting responded to here by the Prismatic Vista getting cracked. Drew playing around the possibility of like a Dark Ritual into an opposition agent. Just getting the planes out as the Bowmasters resolves.
Bowmaster's really showing that if you put just a little bit of text on Raise the Alarm, it's pretty good.
I mean, the best thing about elves, and you've played elves for a while. The best thing about elves was Elvish Visionary. Just a piece of material that didn't cost you any cards to have. You knew a lot with a 1/1, and Orcish Bowmaster does a lot with a 1/1 on its own, and comes with a 1/1. Really showing just how Legacy, despite its power level, is really a game of inches over a game of miles.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a sleeve break, just fixing that for Drew. Doing some shuffling, every Legacy player's favorite pastime.
It's true. They love to shuffle. The only thing they love more than shuffling is like fiddling with their little cantrips.
That's why Ponder's just the actual best card in Legacy. It's the best one to play. It's the one you miss the most. We see an attack for 2 from Will. Yet another different snow-covered swamp. I'm a big fan of those pixel ones.
The pixel lands are cool. Although I will say, as someone who uses the planes, I get told I have a mountain in play a lot because it's quite red.
Yeah, that's the only one I mean, this one looks kind of purple. I could see it being an island, maybe. As we see Will flashing in an opposition agent here, just adding another body to the board as Drew has played his 4th land and passed. Really know for the explosive potential of Will's deck. Seeing it continue to just be this mid-range strategy of just kind of getting some disruptive creatures and attacking in play is pretty interesting. As we see Hardcast Grief. So if you're Drew here, and Drew's just letting this Grief resolve with this hand, what is it that you're looking at in terms of like, where do you need this game to be? Because clearly, if we're letting this Grief go, we're not in the best of spots. What are we looking at?
I think Drew's really wanting to just find Supreme Verdict. I think that is the thing. Drew is basically saying like letting this resolve like, hey, I need to find some way to catch up on the board. So like Supreme Verdict or Narset would have been pretty good, a way to sort of, divert some of the damage and draw some cards here. But yeah, unfortunately for Drew, there's a lot of pressure, and it looks like someone came over there with a little conversation.
Plowshare is the opposition agent. Free up some of those fetch lands in our hand.
We are dangerously close to just sort of, dying. So we are going to Prismatic Ending down the Bowmaster.
Yeah, I mean, 3-2. A 3-2 is a Flip Delver, and you don't need a lot of turns of the Flip Delver to win a game of Magic, as it turns out. It's something we learned from Legacy over the years. And this mono black deck is doing a good job of piecing that all together. As we see Will here untapping, nearly dropping Drew, nearly on a 2-turn clock, right? Drew's at 9. I mean, we also know Drew has 2 fetch lands, so
really going to turned off pretty soon. Also, Orcish Bowmaster, can pump the amass essentially, right? Like amass even more, get bigger. As another Grief is coming down. Enforceable 2 lands with the draws for Drew. So Drew's really going to need a card like Verdict here. Yeah,
it feels like it might be a Verdict or Bust. Knocking the card, we're seeing what it is. It is a Flooded Strand, and that is Will advancing to 5-0 with this mono black deck that continues to look really impressive every time I've seen it on coverage.
Yeah, this deck has really just been one that has me kind of like, wow, like, am I supposed to be playing this? Like, what's going on with this deck? Is this an example of like Legacy's underexplored and like this thing has been good for a bit? Is it the Ring and Bowmaster putting it over the top? Unclear exactly what's going on, but it has proven time and time again so far. This is a real contender deck and one that you should definitely be thinking about going into your Legacy tournament. So I'm unsure if we're going to interview with Will or not. But I knew we have a backup Magic. If not, I'm just going to find out from Induction here in a second in the ear. But so Will is going to try and come over for an interview real quick. He's going to pack up his cards, and we're going to see what his thoughts are on the deck. Because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the round, Abe, he is a guy who has been really liking this deck for a little bit now. I believe he got top 16 at the last NRG, and his friend Chris Smith, who he told the deck about, ended up getting top 4 of the deck. So we have Will in the booth here. We can cut to him, I think. Yep. All right. So let's head on down to see Will here. I see. Oh, looks like we're not actually reckoning. Will wants to make sure he's ready. Can't got his game face on. Boom. And any second now, it should be popping up. And congratulations, Will, on moving to 5-0 with this very exciting deck. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I haven't had a matchup where I've been blown out by anything yet. I've been doing the blowing out.
Nice. How anxious were you when that ring resolved in game 1?
Game 1, I was anxious about it not resolving, but when it resolved, I was very, very pretty set. I'm like, I don't think he can prismatic ending it. I don't know how many colors he's able to get, but I'm expecting just 3, and it can probably draw me out of the pit that I was in.
So how have you been liking this deck? Because we were just talking about it. Our understanding is you told Chris Smith about this deck, and he got top 4. And I believe you got top 16 at the last NRG with this deck, and you've been playing it a lot and really liking it. And it seems very impressive to us here in the booth. What sort of got your eye in this direction, and how have you been liking the deck?
I've been loving it a lot. I really like where it's positioned right now in the meta. It's really good against the Delver strategies. It's really good against the Reanimator strategies, Uro, and control decks in general. They can't pressure your life total. And with the 1 ring 2 being just printed, you can kind of beat control because of that.
Yeah, and your deck is, it's listed here as mono black combo. Yeah. I feel like every time I've watched it, I've never seen a Helm of Obedience activation myself.
Yeah, it's been light today.
Yeah. Are you kind of like like in Pioneer, the mono green, where it's like, yeah, I'm a combo deck, but really just beat down? Is that most of the way those games go?
Basically, the deck reminds me a lot of the Pioneer deck too, because I go into some of these matchups, game 2, I look at my deck box for sideboarding, and I just don't even touch it. It's like, it's just Plague Engineers and then Karn board. It's
awesome. Well, so you're in a really good position right now. You're 5-0. We have 3 more rounds, so you're feeling good. After playing a little bit, if I'm someone at home and I'm like, wow, this Will deck look good, I've seen a couple of NRGs. Is there anything you would change? You keep the same? You're feeling really good about everything? Just kind of like keep playing it. It's great. Sheoldred's worth it.
Sheoldred's great, especially with the One Ring. If you could get that out against any fair deck, they can never deal with your life total. And I might add a 3rd ring main board. I couldn't find room for it really, so but
Sure.
it's been feeling great.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you so much, Will, for coming to the booth. We're going to try and get the rest of our feature match this round. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll probably be seeing a little bit more of you as the day goes on.
Hopefully. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good one, Will.
You too.
And yeah, Will's someone who plays a lot of our events in the running for our championship at the end of the year, especially if it gets a strong top 8 finish today, maybe even a little win. That's 30 points. That's a real thing going on there. But we do have a backup match for you. We got some. So we're going into the match live. Into game 2 live. So yeah, so game 1 happened. We're not really sure we can show you that. So instead, we're going into 2. Let's hop on down to that feature match area right now.
Yeah, and what we're going to come in on here is going to be a matchup of Alluren versus Painter. 2 of the outlier decks of all time, I think, in Legacy. Two classics. Alluren, the namesake enchantment of the deck, a 2 green enchantment that says any player can play creature cards with mana value 3 or less without paying their mana cost, and as though they had flash. So once this enchantment resolves, the Alluren deck can just start comboing off, really. Just casting all their spells for free. And the Painter Servant Grindstone deck, making all the cards of a certain color and then milling out the opponent's entire deck with Grindstone. A lot of weird things can happen in a game with Alluren, where once that card sticks, the other player now has access to a bunch of spells for free. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out as we see Painter up a game over Alluren coming into game 2 here. Yeah,
and this is sort of like things that you hear about in Legacy. Painter obviously has been a bit on the rise ever since Throws of Chaos from the introduction of Warhammer 40k. It's really been a deck that's been seeing more play. And Alluren is sort of a deck of yesteryear, sort of in the similar spot. These are things that you're going to run into because Legacy decks are expensive. Let's just be real with each other here for a second. It ain't cheap to get into it. And sometimes you get your Alluren deck and you're just Alluren for life. You love it. You own the cards. And now, you playing Alluren with some small upgrades every couple of years. And I think that's probably what we're going to see here from someone who's still playing Alluren right now. It's a deck that hasn't really changed much over the last couple of years outside of a few toolboxy creatures.
Yeah, it is a deck that picked up Orcish Bowmasters, giving it a little bit more game in the games where you're kind of fighting to resolve the Alluren. You have a lot of games where you're a pile of value 2 and 3 mana creatures, Ice Fang, Quaddles, Baleful Strixes, and the like, kind of chipping in. We're talking about Elvish Visionary being like one of the best things before. Orcish Bowmasters, more of the same of that. And also, really tying everything together. We see Jacob mulliganing to 6 here. Putting one back. And I guess we're going to see Alluren take the first move. Got a Misty Reinforcement passing from David Atkin. Mountain Go from Jacob. Some Draw Land Go Magic Mason. What are the odds?
My favorite way to do it. That or Dark Ritual Opposition Agent when you fetch. Bam.
That would definitely be
my land go.
All right, and we've got Snow-Covered Forest just passing back. So most of the Alluren decks creatures are all 2 mana, and a lot of 2 mana instant speed spells. As Jacob plays an Ancient Tomb and a Torpor Orb, which would negate just about everything David's trying to do. A lot of enter the battlefield effects in the Alluren deck. It's kind of how the whole thing works.
Abe, we have to be really careful because Urborg of Nature's Wrath is a 4 of in David's deck. That will be sticking on the board if it is in our hand.
That is true. That entering the battlefield will not cause abilities to trigger if that Torpor Orb is around. And I'm curious to know how Painter does against just a raw Uro.
I know most decks can't handle raw Uro, so I'm curious to see if they can. We have some red elemental blasts, some pyroblast, so we will be able to shoot it down. But the little thing is we can always just escape it too. So I'm curious to see exactly what David has here and what Jacob's plan is for that, because as we know from the past, Uro is sort of an unbeatable card once it hits the battlefield. Oh, I love it from Jacob. Just the one. That's all I need.
Just the one. We're firing off an Ice Fang Quaddle here to get a card. See if maybe we have Force of Wills. There's a Force Negation, Force of Will. There's options here to interact on the stack with this Torpor Orb. It looks like we're going to Force Pitch Baleful Strix. And notably, no Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast from the Painter deck, where they play, quite a few of that effect, considering their entire... Right, they have a card in their deck that just makes everything a color of their choice, and they can choose blue. So not being able to defend that Torpor Orb on the stack as Ice Fang Coatl comes across.
Looks like Jacob's taking a little think here. Got a great Furnace. And I think if you're Jacob, you're kind of wanting to find some way to either start threatening a kill or get some grind action going. So maybe a Goblin Welder so we can get back the Torpor Orb, or a Goblin Engineer. Those sort of cards are what we're interested in. But it looks like we're just going to pass the turn as Orcish Bowmasters flashed in.
Yeah. Do you ever think, Mason, if you're Jacob, is there a point to maybe just trying to stick a Grindstone and then letting an Alluren cast your Painter? How creative are you going to get in terms of what you're hiding and what you're not?
Yeah, I think I want to, get a little bit on board, have some of it, and then have that option open to me if I can afford to, if I have some protection or something. Otherwise, I think I want to really go for it. David does have forces, so I want to be careful, but I don't think I want to get too tricky, because David might not also present the Alluren aware that I can use it myself. Players who, we're 3-1 here with Alluren, we're doing pretty well today. You're going to hit this spot where it's like, oh, yeah, I learned these things from happening to me. I'm not going to let them happen. So David might be playing around that here today.
Yeah, you don't choose to play something like Alluren without knowing all those ins and outs. As we see a Polluted Delta getting cracked here. Do you think this might be an Alluren? You think we might see it, the namesake?
We might. I'm kind of hoping it's that Harpy thing. The big one, not the Harpy, the Sphinx that you can cast from exile. I love that card.
Oh, you're thinking about Food Chain.
I'll think about the Food Chain card. Yeah.
I
don't know why. Mist Hollow. Yeah, I don't know why I thought of that card just then. I do like that card, though. That card's cool. I want Leovold now, because I forgot the deck played Leovold, so I looked again. I like Leovold. What a fun card. Are you having fun?
Handshake emoji himself.
Yeah. Put her there.
All right, looks like we have fetch, and we are moving to combat. Leaving back the Bowmasters, just attacking for 2. Bowmasters can get lightning bolted, despite not attacking. Jake's going to drop 15 here. Interesting to see what the follow-up's going to be from David.
Looks like it is Alluren, the namesake.
All right, so Mason, walk us through what can and might happen here as we're seeing stuff start to happen with the Alluren in play.
So this is Aether Mage Channeler. This is going to let you bounce a creature. Basically, Cavern Harpy is the main one. We do have a Pyroblast going to counter the Aether Channeler here. So Cavern Harpy is a 2-mana 2/1 with flying that whenever it enters the battlefield, or whenever it comes into play, return a blue or black creature you control to its owner hand. You may pay 1 life and return this to your hand. So we're going to be bouncing back and forth, playing a bunch of blue creatures that we can draw and eventually assemble a combo kill from there. The main one being Asurek, the Archlich, which lets you explore the dungeon, and you go through the dungeon a bunch. We never go through the one that gets completed, and you end up draining your opponent out.
And it looks like we have Chaos Defiler being just hardcast by Jacob and destroying the Alluren. The good old Rakdos destroy an enchantment card hit the board. And it's also just a 5/4 trample, meaning that, without another snow-covered basic for this Ice Fang Coatl to have Death Touch, it's going to be really tough for David to keep up the pressure.
Yeah. This is also a moment where, this deck kind of got a big buff with this card. The black decks we've seen got a big buff with Orcish Bowmaster. The Chaos Defiler was a huge help for the Painter deck. And for a while as a deck, a lot of players were like, I think this deck's underplayed. It seems really strong. And, now we're sort of seeing it as we're having more Paper Legacy. Players are coming out and playing it, and it's looking very nice as we do get a little rumble in the jungle.
Yeah, David opting not to try to double block there, perhaps afraid of a lightning bolt.
Maybe a lightning
anything
or
else
Goblin
coming up?
Welder. Bring it, come back. You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, letting it hit the graveyard might be more dangerous than taking 5. That's a good point. As we see Fable the Mirror Breaker hitting play here for Jacob. And passing back to David. It looks like he might need to get a little something going. Not having that learn anymore. Kind of having his chance and not being able to just end it all right there.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really like that the Alluren deck, it kind of got a huge upgrade, right, with Orcish Bowmaster, because that's now a kill condition. So if you have like Uro plus it, you can kind of like gain some life, redraw with the Harpy, and you can just shoot people out, right? So if you have more life than them, you can like bounce the Bowmaster, put it back. If your mass army is attacking, you can start, flashing it in. So there's a lot of little things you can be doing with that sort of card. So I really like that sort of move in that direction. It feels like a big get for this deck.
Man, here we see David attacking with the team, offering the opportunity for the Goblin Shaman token to block the Amass token. Looks like that's just going to happen. Jacob's going to take 4 down to 7.
Looks like there's some making sure life totals are the same there. Yeah, it happens to everybody.
And a Pernicious Deed.
Okay. That's a good way to clean up the battlefield.
Yeah, that's why we don't care about that token as much, maybe. We're just going to be able to have the deed here to... The 1/1's not going to do anything anyway.
I think Jacob's maybe responding to it. Nah, just going to untap. Whatever. Your deeds are done.
It can be as pernicious as you'd like. We go to chapter 2 here. Going to see Jacob kind of been doing, I'm not going to say a lot of nothing, but not a lot of something. So it'll be interesting to see if that means hand's a little more reactive, if he's just looking for the right stuff. It looks like he's keeping the whole grip.
Scary sign here. Treasure does get made. Dave's going to pop it. Kill the treasure. Kill the token.
Does that kill the Great Furnace too?
I'm not actually sure. It might. Let's take a little read ski on Pernicious Deed. It's been a couple years since I've deeded it up, as you know. Let's see. Destroy each art. Yeah, let's get a judge down there. That Great Furnace is done ski, right? Each artifact, creature, and enchantment. Would you need to send a judge over there for the old furnace?
Yeah, it's not so great anymore, Jacob. I'm sorry to say. Looks like Jacob's casting Twin Shot Sniper. Gonna deal 2 damage to that Ice Fang Coatl. Okay,
there you go. Yeah.
Catching up with that Great Furnace, gonna use the Badlands to pay. No harm, no foul.
Yep.
Twin Shot Sniper has reach. That's the most secret reach creature of my life.
Yeah, it's a sniper. Can hit him from the sky.
But it's red, Mason. It's red.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the color pie of that little band? A little band. What about Orcish Bowmaster? Ever think about that one?
It doesn't have reach. It's a Bowmaster.
I'm just talking about some color pie bands. Listen, I agree. I only know it has reach too because I played that card in a little bit of testing for the old Atlanta RC, and then I thought better of playing it. But but it had reach. It makes more sense to me than spiders. That's all I'm saying. If we do see an abrupt decay on this Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah.
Spiders shouldn't get birds. You know what I mean?
It could be a really big, like a giant spider.
If it's a giant spider, I understand. But the fact that all spiders get reach because giant spider had reach is just kind of that's some nepotism.
Yeah, and David being asked the question of, can you be at 1 life or do you need this endurance? Really just behind the 8 ball of this 5/4 Trampler, maybe had the opportunity to try to trade for it earlier and hope to fade the existence of Goblin Welder, but really in a pickle. What is it that can get David from where he's at here to a winning position, and what do you think you got to be doing in this combat if you're him?
I think Uro, Titan of Nature Wrath is our way to get out of this. I think we need to maybe take this attack, go to 1, rip an Uro, chump block on the next turn, and then escape Uro. We're gonna have to find, the card. Yeah, but we just had Coward Harpies and a Force of Will, and we saw just the pain or put pressure there. But yeah, I think Uro was the way out of that one. And that is a really exciting round, and once again, sort of showed these combo decks that play fair Magic, playing their fair games and sort of, seeing how those play out. And I think it's kind of a necessary thing, right? It's really hard to be an all-in combo deck. All of our all-in combo decks today have kind of been crushed outside of the Mire that we saw. And that is just kind of the nature of Magic now. I think you can have a little bit of cheese, but you need to have some real meats and potatoes in your deck as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the same thing in Modern, as Modern is, it even has a lot of the same overlap of cards now with Modern Horizons 2, the Lord of the Rings set. Just a lot of these same things playing into more and more of that, really walking a thin line gameplay really makes for some fantastic Magic to watch. And if you like watching Magic, maybe consider hitting that follow button down below, staying with us here at the series, watching these matches, seeing everything play out, learning a little bit about giant spiders, about Secret Reach, getting the real lore.
Yep. Well, that is going to do it for Abe and I. Abe, thank you so much for joining us in the booth today to have you in the NRG Series. And thank you, NRG Series, for having us and hosting this event. We're going to have more Magic with you. Will Hall and Doomwick are about to hop on in just a couple minutes. So don't go anywhere. Like Abe said, follow back in about 5 minutes, and we'll see you all later.